Hi, I'm recording these ACT prep videos for my students. It's actually currently the COVID-19 coronavirus quarantine, and several were planning to take the ACT again, although there's no way to know for sure how exactly that's going to work out. But they're working from home and need something to do. And this is video 2. I'm using a couple different technology options I have available to see which ones I like the best on these first couple of videos, and then I'll probably settle down and start using this. So the first one, if you happen to watch it, was on an Elmo and used also Google Meet. And then now I'm just using my wife's Osmo and iPad. So I'm going to put this little magic mirror reflector on here. And I want to say again that this is the 2018-2019 preparing for the ACT test. This PDF can be found online if you would like to play along and are not one of my students. And we are starting on number 11. What is the slope of the line through -2, 1 and to -5 in the standard XY coordinate plane? So the ACT is always going to say standard XY coordinate plane, just so that if they say that 4 or 5 times, they've wasted a minute of your life. So just kind of ignore that. Some of you might want to start this one by kind of doodling, plotting the 2 points. From left to right, that slants downward, so I'm liking one of these 3 that has a negative answer. What I really want to look at is the change in Y versus the change in X, because that's a standard definition for slope. And if you look at my numbers, Y goes down 6 from 1 to -5. X goes forward 4 from -2 to +2. And that would reduce to -3/2, which is choice D. Number 12 will probably be slightly easier for you all to read because it's closer to the base of that iPad. In Cherokee County, the fine for speeding is $17 for each mile per hour the driver is traveling over the posted speed limit. In Cherokee County, Kirk was fined $221 for speeding on a road with a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Kirk was fined for traveling at what speed in miles per hour? So there's ACT is always reading comprehension, so there's definitely some reading comprehension on this problem. The speed limit's 30, and you're only going to get fined if you're going over that. And so likely Kirk's going 13 miles over or 17 miles over, so they're likely going 43 or 47. They're hoping that, like, you do some math and you get one of these 2 numbers and you see it's there and you don't think about the fact that you need to add that on to the original 30 miles per hour. So it's 30 miles per hour plus how much? Well, it's 17 per mile per hour over, and they were fined $221. So what do I need to do with these numbers? I don't need to subtract them. I don't need to add them. I don't need to divide. I do need to divide them. And if you do 221 divided by 17, 7 is going to go into 21 3 times. So I'm leaning towards something that ends in 3, which would be the 13. And if I add the 13 to the original 30 miles per hour, then it's 43, which is H. I guess I should have actually circled the letter. 13, what is the sum of the solutions of the 2 equations below? And then they write them, and they write them one on top of the other because they're wanting you to think that it's a systems problem, but one of them uses X as the variable, and one of them uses y as the variable. And the problem would be, this is number 13, so now they're getting a little trickier. The problem would be just way too easy if they wrote those side by side and, use nice numbers. I'm going to start with the y one. Subtract 10 to get 12. Divide by 2 to get 6. So it's 6 plus something, because it said that it wanted the sum of these two solutions. When you divide 12 by 8, you get 1 plus something. So it's 1 plus something and 6 for a total of 7 and something. And if you look at the answer choices, it's going to have a fractional part. This doesn't divide evenly. And I know it's 7 plus something. 7.5 is an answer choice. I'm going to pick it before I do any more work. 14. The average of 5 distinct scores has the same value as the median of the 5 scores. So let's just pause there and kind of doodle a little to help us think. So there are 5 scores. Distinct means they're all different. Let's assume that I've written them down in order from least to greatest. Then the median would be this middle score. And what they're saying is that the average of all 5 is equal to that median. The sum of the 4 scores, of the 5 scores is 420. So you could say, oh, maybe I need to divide that by 5. 5 goes into 24 times, and it goes into 480 times, so that'd be 84. And so now I know that that median is 84. What is the sum of the 4 scores that are not the median? So you would take the 420 and you would subtract off the 84. And you would get 2064, 340, 336, which is choice H. And I'm sure there's some other ways to work that problem. That's just kind of what came to me in the middle of trying to do it. I think the key idea is they're just really checking for, do you know average? Do you know median? Can they lose you in these words? $15, what is the value of the expression below? And then it's got like these nested absolute value problems. I used to tell my students that there would be one of these on there every year. And now it's down to more like half the time, because I think ACT has figured out that the teachers have figured out that it's on there all the time and are explicitly teaching their students how to do it. And they don't want you to get it right all the time. They don't want it to necessarily be an easy point. So now they're not putting it on there as much, but I don't know that. I'm just kind of talking. Start kind of here on the inside. This is -8 plus 4 is -4, but the absolute value of that would be 4. 3 minus 9 would be -6, and the absolute value of that would be 6. But there still needs to be a subtraction there, and absolute value. 4 minus 6 is -2. Absolute value of -2 is +2, which is choice D. The outermost part of this problem was absolute value. So these two choices that had negatives were impossible. So you could have actually just gotten rid of those two choices right off the bat. Then that one's definitely a little hard to read, so I'll kind of turn it sideways. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x to the 2/3 power? This is the sort of problem that wasn't really on the ACT much at all a few years ago, and then they started putting it on there. Honestly, once Algebra 2 became more of a requirement, across the board in the United States. They started adding a few more problems like this. This is just testing your knowledge of a basic definition. The denominator of a fractional power becomes an index on a radical, and the numerator stays an exponent. So the 2 stays an exponent, but the 3 in this case becomes an index on a power. You compare that to the choices, and it looks an awful lot like K. They actually wrote the square inside the radical. No work required. They're really just checking. If you know the definition, you've seen it before and you remember it, you work that problem in about 5 seconds. And it took me, a couple minutes to explain it, since I'm not assuming that you know everything perfectly. That's why you would be watching this. 17. In the standard xy coordinate plane, what is the slope of the line given by the equation 4x equals 7y plus 5? But we want slope, so we want it to look like y equals mx plus b. And they gave it to us with 4x equals, not y equals. So I would subtract the 5 to the other side. Divide by 7. This right here in front of the x is going to be your slope. So we're looking for a slope of 4/7, which is choice B. (18) For which of the following conditions will the sum of the integers m and n always be an odd integer? So sum is we're adding m plus n, and we want that to be odd. And then it lists some choices, and it boils down to about m being odd, n being odd, they're both odd, they're both even, or it's one is odd and the other is even. I just encourage students to pick some options for m and n and compare that to m plus n. And I would avoid, use simple numbers, but avoid 1 and 2. Would kind of and be some good advice. So let's say we use both odd. 3 and 5 would add to 8. That's not odd. So it's not that they can both be odd. Well, what about if they're both even? 4 and 6. Well, that's 10. That's still even. Well, what if I just choose, the 3 with the 6? Hey, that's 9. That's odd. What about the 4 with the 5? Hey, that's still 9. That's still odd. So it looks like for this to add up to odd, you need an even number and an odd number added together. And some of you might just know that as a fact. And so when you read the question, as long as it makes sense to you, you're able to choose that it's got to be an odd and an even. But if you read one and you're not sure, I would pick numbers. Again, easy numbers to work with, but not necessarily 1s and 2s, and just try it and see what happens. If you watch the first video, you know that I'm working this in chunks of 10, so I'm going to do 19 and 20, and then I'm going to stop the video and check out the quality and see if I want to try a different device. 19. The lengths of the two legs of right triangle ABC shown below are given in inches. The midpoint of AB is how many inches from A? So again, I wish I were actually working this in my book, but I'm trying to preserve my book in case I make a bad boo-boo and have to re-record a segment. So on 19, we're copying the diagram. You wouldn't copy it if you were actually taking the ACT. You would just write all over the one that's there. A lot of times on a geometry problem, part of the words are describing the diagram. So this first sentence you can just ignore, never read it again. It's in the diagram. It's saying that it's giving you the two lengths of a right triangle. It's a right triangle. There's a length of a leg. There's a length of a leg. The midpoint of AB is not marked. I'm going to put it there and call it M. And what they actually want is how far it is from A. And you could do this as a Pythagorean theorem problem. You would use the whole thing from there to there is x. And you would say that the hypotenuse x squared is equal to 24 squared plus 32 squared. And you would eventually get that answer. But in the interest of teaching you a shortcut, the ACT loves 3, 4, 5 right triangles. And I'm willing to believe there's a reasonable chance that maybe this is a 3, 4, 5 right triangle in disguise. And if it is, I can speed myself up on the problem. So I'm going to check real fast. I need 3 times what to make 24? 3 times 8 is 24. I need 4 times something to be 32. And if it's 8, again, I'm in business. And 4 times 8 is 32, which means that this side over here is 5 times 8, which is 40. And then I only need half that because they went from M to A, and half of 40 is 20. So I've decided that it's 20b without using Pythagorean theorem. I could have done Pythagorean theorem. I would have gotten 40. 40 is an answer choice. I might have been tempted to pick it. I would hopefully have known to cut it in half and choose 20. Or if you know that 3, 4, 5 is a right triangle and you can kind of spot like, hey, maybe this is a multiple of a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. There's almost always a 3, 4, 5 right triangle in there in disguise. It's never just 3, 4, 5. You have to find it. So if you're not good at noticing that, just do the Pythagorean theorem. 20. In triangle DEF, the length of DE is square root of 30 inches. Well, one, I don't see a triangle. So I guess I could doodle one. And you might be tempted to draw a right triangle because this right above it is a right triangle. Maybe instead of doodling, I'm going to keep reading. The length of EF is 3 inches. If it can be determined, what is the length in inches of DF? And it gives some values. You can only find the missing side of a triangle if it's a right triangle, if you know 2 of the sides. And so this is one of the rare occasions when K cannot be determined from the given information is actually the right answer. You don't know that it's a right triangle. You just did a right triangle problem, the one above it. So they're hoping you assume that it's a right triangle and do some work and get an answer. But what I would say to you is, if you have to guess, never, ever, 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 ever on the ACT guess cannot be determined from the given information, because it is very unlikely that that is going to be the right answer. So I'll take the little magic mirror cap off the top of the iPad and just tell you, like, thanks for tuning in. Hope this helps. Thanks for bearing with me if you're actually watching all of these videos with me trying out the different tech and seeing which one I think is going to work the best.